next edition of the Value Exchange podcast. I'm Annabelle Lambert and I am here with my regular co-host Rob Pye. Say hello, Rob Pye. This is the
Hi,
usual
I
silence.
got a bit of a comms problem there. Hi, I'm
Oh,
Rob Pye,
no.
and I have a jacket on today.
And I have headphones because my dog decided to eat my in-ear headphones yesterday. So I'm in a temporary zone. But we are also most delighted to be joined by Simon Bland today, who I think my summary is that he is all about promoting and creating a thriving local community in the Reigate and Banstead area, working with businesses, residents, community groups, and also doing some mentoring around entrepreneurs, some wonderful stuff. So I'm just going to hand over to Simon to give a better introduction of himself, understand who he is, what he is, why he does what he does. So Simon, tell us a bit about your story.
Thank you, Annabelle, and that was a very generous introduction. So yeah, I am the head of economic prosperity at Reigate and Banstead Borough Council, and the main focus of my work now is to support the local business community. With a small team, our responsibility is to help businesses start, develop and grow, and then to try and get more local people in good local jobs. I have worked in the council now for almost 20 years. When I came to this organisation, it was very much about community engagement and trying to help local communities do what was important for them to resolve their issues. So I have that legacy, some of those relationships still, and absolutely as an organisation that we see if we're helping local entrepreneurs and particularly people starting their own business, we're not only helping the economy, we're helping community, we're helping families, we're helping individuals, and we're trying to improve the quality of life in a fairly holistic way. So that's what I'm about. Clearly, I could rattle on forever, but maybe there is something more specific that you'd like to hear from me, and I can try and give you that content.
So we often, particularly, people in government, central government, local government, police force, we talk to people a lot, and it's sort of stepping back from the role and tell us a bit about your journey, about how you got there. And I have to do a full disclosure for people watching this and say, ethos, we're a VCSE, a SME, or whatever three letters that are polite you want to give us.
Polite only.
But I live in the Reigate and Banstead area, so I am one of Simon's disciples when it comes to helping people get jobs, being a small business. So I am,
I work for you, Rob. I mean, that's what it is.
I feel it's the other way around, It's like, but yeah. And no. So Simon, the specifics of unpicking. So we got a good bit about the headline of the role description. If you like, there's not a lot of depth there. Just to unpick a little bit about your journey and the sort of experiences and that you've had in arriving at where you are now.
Yeah. So thank you, and I will do the long story if that's okay, and hopefully not take too long on it. My parents had a high street business, so they had a high street pharmacy. So I grew up in that context. Providing a service to people was what they did.
And boy, how has that changed in the high street? In the last 30 or so years.
Absolutely. But, I spent some time in the shop as a small boy and understood the relationship that my mum and dad had with the businesses on the same road and how they collaborated and cooperated and some things that were quite odd at the time. Next door was a building society. And both shops had a toilet, both units had a toilet. And it was felt because both units had mixed staff that one building should be the gents and one building should be the ladies.
Wow.
Wow.
So there was no separation in the cellar between the building society and the pharmacy. And so people would wander from unit to unit, which probably would be frowned upon now. But nevertheless, so that was very early years. As a young person, about 12 or 13, I set my heart on being a hotel manager. I went out to a social event with my mum and dad. and there were people dressed up, having dinner, enjoying each other's company. And I thought, this is the way to earn a living. If you can do this for a living and be with people having a good time, that would be a great thing to do. And so I think that I was fortunate in knowing from those early years, having a clear idea about what it was that I wanted to do. That sustained me through school. I left school and went to catering college, still with the same ambition. The first job I had on leaving catering college was in a kitchen. I became a chef. The plan at that time, and it was not an unusual plan, is you do 6 months in one department, 6 months in another, 6 months in another, 6 months in another. Then you present yourself as a rounded individual, having experience across the business as a whole. Being a chef was all right. We got to drink on duty and swear and be rude to people.
As Gordon Ramsay has shown us.
Yeah, so some of the things you say on telly about chefs are true. And I have to say, and I'm probably ashamed to say, that it changed my view about what I would do after 6 months. And so I stayed a chef. And I enjoyed it, and I kept doing that through my late teens into my early 20s. In my mid-20s, I had a sudden realization that in the 40 years of this, and I couldn't bear the prospect in reality of doing the same job for the 40 years. I had been moderately successful. I was a head chef. The restaurant I worked in was very popular. It was very well regarded. And it's like, well, where'd you go now? You can't keep doing the same thing for 40 years. And also the realization that as a chef, you control the environment that you are in to quite a high degree. I mean, you can't stop the orders coming in, but in the kitchen, you control everything. But it's a very, very small world. And I was tempted with the notion of having less control but more influence. And so I went to teacher training college, and I learned how to teach people, which took me then into the world of further education, where dealing with young people, primarily 16 to 19, and trying to help them on their journey. The realization there is that we're all, as a group of people of similar ambition, we're on the same journey. It's no one's got it and no one hasn't got it. We're just in different places along that journey. And if you can help somebody along that journey, then you're doing a good thing. And that helps people fulfill their own aspirations. They get to do what they want. They become self-reliant. They develop their own confidence and find their own way. 10 years or so of that. And a change in the world of education, further education. And rather than being government controlled, incorporated bodies, so FE colleges, further education colleges had to find their own way. And I was very fortunate at that time because the college that I worked at took a view that they should embed more in their local community, and that adult education was a thing that should be more important to them. And by that, they didn't simply mean providing courses for people over the age of 16, professional qualifications. It should be something about changing people's life chances, giving them more aspiration, give them, back to the word control, but give them more control over their local area, their lives, their communities. And I was fortunate with some colleagues from that college to be part of a program with North Carolina State University called community-based learning. And in essence, that was a model from the Eastern Seaboard about how what they call their version of further education colleges really provide a service to the local community and try and resolve issues in the community and use that issue resolution as a mechanism to provide education and learning to those communities. So that again took me further on the journey. And that gave me a new area of work to work in. It gave me more influence, less control, and it really changed the way that I thought about how you engage with people and help them do what they want. And this notion of you have to start with what people want. If you help people do what they want, you can help them do other things as well. But there's no point trying to persuade someone to do what you want because you think it's good for them.
There's a lot of that about.
There's
Still.
a lot about that, and I'm going to come back to the theme just before I get to the end of this, which then led me to a point where the local council in the area that I worked was looking to recruit some people to engage with their communities. It had been a very inward-looking organisation, and they wanted to recruit a team of people who, in essence, sat on the boundary of the organisation, looked outside it and worked outside it, but brought information back into the organisation that would help it have an understanding about its mission, to bring intelligence in, to inform the way that that organisation operated. And so that's what brought me to Reigate and Banstead Borough Council, that first job as the community liaison manager, to help local councillors fulfil their role out in their wards, in their communities, in trying to resolve community issues. Over a period of time, because of part of the work that I've done has been engaged with the business community, my role has become refined, if that's the right term to use. So now it is primarily about working with the business community to help people. We have around 1,200 businesses start every year in Reigate and Banstead. So if we can do things to help them survive better, to grow, to be more successful, then that is a good thing in its own right. But we work with businesses of all sizes. So we also try and work with the largest employers to make sure that they can operate easily here and they can get the skilled staff that they need so that they can fulfill their mission. What I was going to say that you brought up, Annabelle, and I'm sorry, you're indulging me, about the year that I joined the employment market, there was a big central government drive to change vocational education because the feeling was that vocational education didn't meet the needs of industry. And there wasn't enough employer engagement in determining what vocational education should be like. And I can reflect that central government will be having the same conversation and saying exactly the same thing when I leave the employment market and hang up whatever it is that you hang up in my sort of role of work, with very little progress seems to have been made. But it is this notion of trying to tell people what they should be doing rather than work with people to help them do what's important to them.
Yeah. So what a wonderful story, a journey, very, very deep and meaningful. So thank you for sharing. And as we've been going along, I've been going, question, as always, because we never prepare for these things. But so I've got a difficult question warning coming up. So I'm a young person, let's say, or I'm looking for a career change. I'm watching this, and I'm thinking, it's all right, Simon, listening to that because you're amazing. Wow, I was fortunate. I'm doing this and that. Wow, it's so easy. But one of the things we want to do in this show is strip down that there is another story in there, which is difficult being me's story. There, we all have to overcome problems along the way, transition between work. You've stayed at Reigate Council for almost 20 years. How have you managed that? It can't have been, easy to be you. What are a couple of the most difficult things you've had to kind of turn into good stories along the way, but they've been really challenging?
That is a difficult question.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. I mean, it's good. Thank you for that difficult question, Rob. And I think that my answer might contradict your question to a certain extent, because I think that the important bit is to keep being you. So I have kept being me. And I recognise that some things have changed around me. What might have been fashionable, what might have seemed to be a priority, have changed. The people who were in favour and out of favour have changed. But being your authentic self as much as possible and doing the things that you believe in, either allows you to stay and thrive, or it absolutely tells you that you have to leave and do something else. But I don't think that you can be successful to yourself by being pushed around by that external agenda
And
and
I
trying to
think
please the people that you're with.
I think you've just beautifully summed up what value exchange is all about. Now, of course, the issue is a lot of people kind of think, who am I by the role they're doing or the circumstances they're in, or so. Another difficult question, warm up, but. And you don't just like discover it at Christmas because you unwrap a little wrapper and say, "Okay, this is me." Then, isn't it? This is me. It's a journey, isn't it? And I still don't know I'm 57. Don't know what I want to do when I grow up.
Oh,
I don't
absolutely
want to grow
not.
up.
No, I'm with you.
So I've got a couple of questions coming up, but the first is not when did you uncover it, but how? What was that process that allowed you to? You talked about that the high street and the toilets. I think it's just a beautiful story. You talked about being a chef and being able to laugh and scream and swear, like you see on the telly. So there must have been shaping events that said, "Look, I like this, I don't like that." What some of those memories then?
And so, yes, I think that the like that and don't like that is hugely important. And I think that that is the benefit of maturity, isn't it? In that negatively, I'd say we find more things we don't like and avoid them. But, the positive side is that we get to really know what we like. And I would recognize and accept that part of what has shaped me is those years in the kitchen. And I've spoken to other people who have had similar experiences. Part of the benefit of teaching people in that environment is that over a period of time, there are a lot of them. And you bump into them later in life, and many of them now did different things. I have fairly regular contact with people who are quite senior in the police, who work high level in commercial environments, but they started in the kitchen. And one thing that is common about us is short feedback loops. Because a kitchen gives you a short feedback loop. The order comes in, you prepare the food, you get it out, you've done a good job. The customer might say you've done a good job. But this is really quick and it's really immediate. And it is, unfortunately, I think, for some people a bit addictive. But it is that, yes, you've done a good job. 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 And that is central to me. That in real terms, and some people don't think it's a good thing, I want a client. I want to please somebody. I want to find out what they want, and I want to try and give them what they want. As a chef, I don't pick what they eat. They pick what they eat. My job is to give them what they want to eat. And what
What
I
a
need to do
lovely metaphor for life, isn't it? Really,
yeah,
it's
yeah. I mean, we might be able to talk about the ingredients and how much time we've got and what equipment and resources we have, but ultimately, this is help me understand what you want, so that I can do my best to give it to you, and that's the central bit, I think, to what I do, and that's what I'm still interested in. In that, when I meet people, when we're contacted by an entrepreneur, it's what you're trying to do, what you're trying to achieve. It's something that we can do to try and help that. I'm endlessly fascinated by that, and then want to do my bit to help.
Moved by the sort of transferability of skills and experience, because what you describe, I can see that working really well in the police force, just that thing in itself. The environment
or
is
the
set
armed
for that.
forces,
or the armed
as well.
forces as well.
Like
So
frontline nurses,
anywhere like that, and I think
doctors.
and
Yeah.
having spent some time in the past working with transition from military into civvy street. Just that translation of, actually, these are the things, these are the things that matter. It doesn't matter who I was, what I was doing, where I was. It's like, how do I deal with this problem? How do I talk to people? How do I find out what they want? How do I, those
Yes.
things are so, and we spend so much time caught up in, well, you've never been a chef, so therefore you can't be a chef. I mean, it's it's interesting to hear you talk about that.
And I want to say also, Simon, that again, thank you for that. But you're clearly someone with huge experience and wisdom, lots to share, lots to give. And
you're very generous, Rob.
We found, well, we do our best. We found in that, like, young leaders, 65 souls to employ and look, give them work experience, basically. Some people were ex-offenders, some without education, some, Russell Group University, who were lost, and everybody's kind of lost in the pandemic, because none of us, had jobs in the high street, did we? So that actually, when people come to the conversation, they might not think they know what they like, they know what they do. I mean, most people know what they don't like, but they don't have a notion of this sort of transferable skills and that. But give them a problem, give them a context. And some people go, "Well, I'd like to do graphic design," and actually they find out maybe that they want to be in the kitchen, or they want to do finance, or they want a customer service or something. So it's all about helping the young people just learn by experience rather than just in the classroom, just qualifications. And that's what we've done a lot with this thing, that we, with value exchange, it's all very well talking about the role, but it's the person behind the role that we're trying to get out. And we're trying to get people comfortable with the fact that you bring so much more to employers than the job description. You bring your whole self, is the sort of message here.
No, absolutely. And I mean, I have grown up children, and I've seen it with them. They've both worked since the time they could work, part-time work as teenagers and through. For a period of time when my son was looking for full-time employment, he couldn't find it, couldn't get it. And I saw how disheartened he was. As a young man with experience, well qualified, a lot to offer, but he was seeing that through the lens of job description. I could do that, I couldn't do that, I'm not qualified for that, rather than what he could add and offer. But now that he's in work and he's got a role, he recognises that what he brings to the job is himself.
Mm-hmm.
And how he tackles it and what he puts into it and how good his interpersonal skills are and how well he can understand the challenge that needs to be overcome. But the work language is somewhat of a barrier, isn't it? And that we use words that really don't mean anything. They're not good descriptors. When I was young, it's easy to want to be a fireman or a train driver because you think you know what that means, even if you don't. But a lot of job titles now give you no clue as to what it might mean.
No.
So how do you know it's for you or not? And how do you know it fits with the things that you like and don't like and your personality? So it is a challenge.
So I want to wind now to the present day, if we may, and talk about now. And we've the context for that is we done some work together before the pandemic about local people, local jobs, employment, the local enterprise partnership, which is all about skills in the region. Then the pandemic came along. Oh my word! Can you remember that? Yeah. COVID-19, and suddenly it turned the world upside down, and so right up to date now with sort of, what do you see as the issues in the market at the moment? Cost of living crisis. You've got still unemployment issues. We've got small businesses struggling with this context of so just how do we help? How do we help businesses and education now? Sort of right up to date. Where is the world of Simon's Reigate and Banstead, business?
On the positive side, having been a little bit cynical about government intervention, I think one of the things that are potentially exciting now is that there appears to be more flexibility in funding for post-16 education. So some of the funding now isn't being directed just to a chunk, and this is the whole qualification.
In vocational or T-skills or apprenticeships or all of the above?
Well, T levels and apprenticeships will still have that basis because you need to get the qualification at the end. But now talking about things like micro qualifications, where people can learn elements of a more formal qualification, but be recognised for that and there be funding for it. Where before the funding was for the whole thing. Now there's talk of funding being sliced up so people can access an element of a qualification which might be relevant to them or their employer and do it quick and get a bit of upskilling they need and move forward. Because I think that the challenge is possibly an even greater disconnect. I'm going to call it in the system as a whole than there was before COVID.
Disconnect between which ends of it?
Well, I think in the system as a whole. So I will try and I'll try and be articulate, but I might fail. So please forgive me if I fail on this mission. Possibly individuals have been on the journey, haven't they? From 2020 to now, and people's aspirations, their behaviours, what they do now, how they behave, how they react, what they're frightened of now, their levels of confidence are different. And I think that there are more people who feel less able to take challenges on now than there were before. Employers are finding it very difficult to recruit. My perception for that in some cases is that means they are becoming less innovative in their recruitment processes and potentially, oddly, in a counterproductive way, becoming more conservative. So sort of experience you had in taking 65 young people on who had mixed experience, knowing that some of those people had a huge amount to offer, isn't the sort of thing that businesses are doing, that they're being more conservative and trying to make sure they get exactly the right fit because they don't want to go through this process again. And that link then between employers and educators, individuals and educators, to try and make sure that the educated providers can provide the right bit of middleware. So the upside is that middleware might get easier to access and be funded, but there's still this notion potentially of quite a few people, a good segment of the community, not feeling able to step up to a challenge that they might have felt able to do before and feeling stuck.
And one of the things that we are researching, investing in is the evidence that kind of diversity, and I don't just mean the normal diversity or even just neurodiversity or gender or but the diversity of moving, of flexing beyond, I have to have a chef who's been a chef, who's got this qualification, and then don't talk to me about anything else. Have you been a chef? Have you got so the sort of culture and aptitude fit? That just having the soft skills that said, you know what, I know Simon's got no qualifications, but he's just going to fit in well, and therefore I know that I can make it work for the long term with Simon. I know that there might be a bit of training, bit of this, bit of that, but and so we're trying to bring more evidence about the mapping, if you like, on both sides of the fence to the culture fit. And I wonder what your opinions are on that, if that would be worthwhile.
No,
for the market.
I think absolutely, and it needs to work on both sides, doesn't it? Potentially for the employee and employer, because I believe the employees need to take more risks. If risk is the right word to use, even I think the employees need to be more flexible in terms of how they look to recruit. I think that they need to accept that they need to invest in onboarding in a different way, that they need to help people learn how to do the job that they want doing, and they need to support the individual. The individual coming in must not feel lost. They mustn't feel disempowered because they can't do the job immediately to a standard that's required. I mean, and I'm thinking part of my context is back to my early years in work in kitchens where people got shouted at and things like that. I'm sure it doesn't happen anymore. But if you're going to take somebody on who is a good emotional fit, they have the right sort of aptitude, they're committed to want doing a good job, they will need time to acquire the skills and experience to do the job well. I think to be supported to do that. And that's what should be working and isn't working at the moment, because it seems to be, we want a widget. If you're a widget, you come in, you fit in immediately, and the machine works. And I'm quite convinced that when I was younger, my employers did not expect me to turn up on day one and be a fully effective member of their team.
Yeah,
They would have expected me to have edges that needed knocking off, my hand holding, some input, and I think that some of that has gone in a drive for efficiency.
What a good point! What a great point!
And it's not efficient. I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? It's entirely counterproductive.
Yeah. So again, into the sort of employers space rather than the education or employees. So we're doing quite a bit of work with government and the Social Value Act. So for those who haven't heard of the Social Value Act, this is this piece of legislation that says if government are buying something, then they want the supplier to think about social value outside of just the main contract. You know, I'm buying pencils, I'm buying, you know, PPE for the NHS. I'm going to put at least 10% of my marks, you know, on what are you going to do to make the world a better place? Environment, you know, we'll give you some hints. Like, for example, I might want to employ unemployed people. People have been long-term unemployed in Reigate and Banstead. And if you can, you know, employ someone, I'm going to use the Social Value Act and give you, you know, a financial benefit of £27,000 a year because you've created a job for someone, you know, who was disadvantaged in some way.
Yeah.
So as SMEs and startups and, you know, local businesses, is this kind of in the battle rhythm of what, you know, your chief execs, what the local businesses are talking about and implementing? And is it something we could do more to educate them, do you think, or inform them of the opportunities of this with government? Or what, is it in there?
I think for some it is and for some it's not, and it tends to be the medium and large businesses that have that, because they're going through a tender process, and it's quite clearly written into the tender process that needs to be social value provided. I would say from reading some of those tender documents, some businesses get it and some don't. So I think there is a degree of education to, you know, what does social value mean?
What does it mean?
How is it
Absolutely.
delivered? How is it valued? How is it measured? You know, because sometimes people say, well, we'll take on 2 apprentices, we will have a trainee, and these are particularly common in construction jobs, and that's great. But often then you would find out, I'm not talking about our own personal experience, but you know, in other areas, that the build project isn't long enough for people to complete their apprenticeship. So an apprentice taken on but doesn't qualify because
does that work?
So what social value has been added when you have somebody who then, well, the project's finished, so we'll let you off. We haven't finished. So I think there's an education piece about what social value
is.
Really is, and then I think that when that's better embedded, absolutely, and it should flow down through all sizes of businesses. I think generally now a lot of micro businesses sort of see it as what they do because they're local businesses and they want to do something for their local community because that's how they work. And it's sort of lost as a business scales and grows when the focus becomes all about business.
You know, I'm sorry to, you know, seem sort of pedantic or whatever, but your example of the chemist next to the building society and the toilets, you know, I mean, if that happened now, we would all be, you know, just saying how wonderful it is. But it just like wouldn't we? Surely, wouldn't we be talking about that community value? That I think it's a fantastic. You know, we should really we should.
Well,
And sorry, what?
no, you
Go on. No. Well, I was going to move on to a slightly different slant.
go.
Okay, so the slightly different one is that. So if I'm bidding for government, I've got the Social Value Act. On the other end of that, there is this thing called ESG, environmental social governance. And if I'm a big company, so we talked about small, if I'm a bigger company and I've got shareholders and financial markets, there's regulation that says I need to report, my net zero, my scope 1, 2, 3, companies, that have to do it are pretty good at producing the brochures and kind of all of that stuff. But increasingly, the question is like it's back to your point about what does social value really mean? How does that external statement get into the fabric of
Yes.
the organisation? And again, the spirit of sharing toilets across two premises. Sorry, um, but do organisations, young people care, the Gen Z, the proposition to employees, are people putting it in their HR DNA, do you think, this social environmental bit, getting employees to live it? We've got a B Corp like Cook on Reigate High
Yeah.
Street, for example, that's a registered B Corp, which is, we get audited every year, about
Yeah.
our carbon footprint. And yeah, it's a good
Yeah.
thing, isn't it?
It's a good thing. So no, absolutely, and I think that the large employers, particularly, are promoting ESG as they try to recruit people. So I wouldn't claim to know firsthand, but absolutely, younger people are reported to be more interested in, shall we call it, the ethics of the organisation they're going to work for, the values, value alignment, and potentially personal satisfaction in working somewhere rather than chasing the cash, which might have been more familiar in my early stage in work. So I think that as a way of trying to recruit the right people, some employers are absolutely going out there being very public about their credentials, environmental, social, governance. They want to be seen as being a good employer of choice. But I would go back to sometimes that still is not playing out in their recruitment practices in terms of the pool of people that they might consider. So it is
Yeah.
being used very effectively as a device to try and attract the right people. But there's still a degree of sifting, I think, that goes on with those people that could work at a coarser grain. More people could
Yeah,
get through.
and somebody said to me once, I think it's a great thing to get young people work ready, more work ready. It's an even greater ambition to get work more young people
People
ready.
ready. Yeah, absolutely.
Ready for
Yeah,
the young people. And
yeah,
I think it takes two to tango, doesn't it? It's kind of like the change on both sides of the fence.
absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
So I wonder, Annabelle, you've got some questions, and then sort of looking at the time a tiny bit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm conscious of the time, and also I have a very noisy snoring dog in my background, which I
No,
have
we
experienced
can't hear it.
before.
That
No, because
sounds quite
I've
restful.
no, I've exactly.
Bits off her off it,
I have muted her a lot, but she's definitely there, and I've tried to rouse her, and she's not joining in. So no,
No.
I'm moved and connected and motivated by everything you said, Simon, about sort of employers and creating space for young people to come and, try some stuff. Because actually, without the trying, getting in, you talked about your carousel when you went to educate around, I want to be a hotel manager. So you went to catering college, and that whole just sort of relieving ourselves of the expectation that you can do this job right away. But what does that mean, and how does that how could we, again, I mean, I felt like I was asking this yesterday as well with someone who is in the space of helping MSCs move into employment. Again, this gap between education and employment, and it's how do we help employers understand that actually by opening their mind, being a bit more open-minded, and reversing the conservatism you described earlier of what they're doing, and making it less accessible. I feel culture and organisation needs to be more accessible to people so they can feel what they need to feel. And I don't have the answers to that. I mean, I know how we experimented with it, and it was amazing. And you have at one end, you will have the people who actually just turning up to work is a major achievement. And then others who could deliver projects, tomorrow, without any question whatsoever, of a high complexity. And both ends matter. And how do we support those who need more support, who are less likely to get sifted through, by understanding that actually what we need to do, the biggest social value we could deliver, is to help these people experience work, learn through what they're doing, learn to turn up, learn to trust. People won't just throw them on the scrap heap because their life demanded of them that they couldn't actually turn up to work, which was totally almost out of their control, I would say, in some instances. So I sort of, it's a problem I would really like to solve. And I feel it comes from helping people more, but taking the approach, the efficiency does my head in. I understand it. I know where it comes from, an industrial, construct that we've created, but it's not, at the end of the day, we should be looking after each other, helping people have work, helping people, thrive. Surely that's the best outcome any business could achieve.
But I think sorry that everyone, but it sounds quite motivating that other work we're doing is around employee well-being, in that if your job is to do anything and you're not in yourself, your best self, you're not really going to be efficient, productive, but you also aren't going to be able to help others. So we are working to help some charities with their staff who are quite burnt out, because they're doing children's support stuff. They're helping the most vulnerable families in society, and it's like, I've been doing this and I got to stop now. In teaching, it's the same. That university lecturers are on strike, nurses are leaving in their tens of thousands. There is a crisis of well-being on the worker side, and if we kind of want to get ahead of that, we do need to put our oxygen mask on first, and then okay, right, I can help other people. I'm all right. I'm okay. And so it's very, very interesting.
It is, and I mean, in the corporate world, it's easy to talk about the fact that we need to move away from shareholder value to stakeholder value, isn't it? That this isn't about extracting the maximum amount of profit to some people who put someone into the business who might be anywhere, and it is about a business.
How do you feel that's received, Simon? Because I think we can say it, but actually, at the end of the day, it's a really difficult thing. It's a massive thing that we feel we should, we feel we want to undertake, and actually, the generation you talked about coming through, who are not about the cash, who aren't Thatcher's generation, that's me, and not about the cash. Then it's like it's going to happen, I think, but it's a massive undertaking. So
it is a massive undertaking.
How do we begin to take small steps now? I feel we have to. But
so I mean, I think that you're right. We have to, and I think there will be small steps. And I think that some employers potentially are waking up to that. That actually, if you just keep taking profit out, that's a game that doesn't end well, is it? That if you want to keep delivering quality, that needs to be delivered in a different way, and then absolutely your employees become a different sort of resource, because you need them to be happy to deliver a good job. You need to care about them in a different way. It needs to stop being all about costs. Care workers and nurses need to feel fulfilled when they've done their job, not burnt out because you're asking them to do too much in too little time. They need to be able to do what inspires them to do that work, which is probably caring for people.
Yeah,
If they haven't got enough time to
absolutely.
care for somebody on their shift, they just leave disenfranchised, don't they?
Yeah.
So not easy to do. I absolutely, I agree with you, Annabelle. It's an easy thing to talk about, and people say, yes, that makes sense.
It's a no-brainer.
Enacting it, absolutely. Enacting it is difficult, and we've proved it's difficult. But I don't think it's as difficult as people make it out to be. And I think that we can identify some good practice and grow it and prove that it works. I mean, this is the important thing, isn't it? Improve that it's work. And I would say, as the oldest person on the call, all these young people need to be in work for the benefit of society as a whole, because there are fewer and fewer people of working age. That, in terms of tax revenue and employers having people to deliver the work, they need to think about changing their recruitment practices, their training practices, their onboarding practices, because we need fewer people in the community excluded from meaningful work. And by meaningful work, I mean meaningful to the individual as well as to the employer.
Yeah.
And it's such an intuitively obvious equation that, if you've got a society where you're increasingly paying for people to not work, unemployed, you increase the tax burden on society, and you've got, people of my age deciding to retire because they're done with work. I'm out of the labour force forever. I can't take it anymore. And therefore, that, intuitively, if you think beyond your organisation, creating work opportunities where you can balance the books, with people. You take somebody off the unemployment roll, you keep them engaged, you keep them happy, you less demand in the NHS,
Absolutely.
It's an obvious value proposition, really.
It is.
But we're not going to solve the world's problems today,
and
maybe next week. And one of the
keep doing our little bit is what we must do.
One of the privileges,
Absolutely.
The benefits of, is that in Ethos we've made time to be able to think about that is a real privilege. And so our sort of giving back is that's not easy to balance the books and make it all work, but it is the core of what we're about. It's just being able to take time with people to step back and think, on the hamster wheel or the duck on the water. And so your give back here is just hugely welcome, and I want to thank you.
Well, I hope it has been of some value.
Masses,
absolutely.
masses.
It's been a pleasure for me. It's good to talk to you both, so thank you very much. And I hope it has been of some interest and value.
Of course, definitely.
Until the next time.
Thank you. Yes.
Until the next time.
Thank you very much.